Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and holistic health practitioner, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. I bet some of you are brand new to this show, and that's mind-boggling because this show's been going on for over 10 years. 10 years of sex and play and fun, and you might just be brand new, but you might also not be. You might be coming to me live from months and months and years, and maybe you've been an avid listener forever. Whatever it is, however you're coming into listening to this, I'm so grateful and so grateful that you are listening in. So thank you so much. So on this episode tonight, we are going to be talking about intimacy milestones and setting targets for relationship growth. I know a lot of people look at their lives and they look at different things in their lives and they create targets, and then they look back after they've created those targets, 6 months or a year down the road, they might look back and might look at those targets and say, oh, wow, look what I've accomplished. Now, that's amazing that, we tend to do it in business. We tend to do it, even maybe life goals. You might have set out at some point in your life and said, by the time I'm 30, by the time I'm 40, A, B, C, and D are the things I'd like to have accomplished. Sometimes those can become daunting. And then when we don't accomplish them, we can feel really bad about ourselves. A lot of low self-esteem can come from that. So the targets that you're creating are to note which ones you've accomplished and then which ones you can still continue to work to accomplish. It's not about going, oh, I didn't get any of that done. Acknowledge what you did accomplish. And sometimes they might not be things that you've written down. And why on earth do you want to have any relationship targets? Why would you like to have milestones? What's the point of all of this? Well, we're going to find out today. So for those of you who are brand new and those of you who are returning, you'll know and you'll find out today that I am an sex and intimacy coach as well as a holistic health practitioner. And in my private practice, I work with all kinds of people, wide range of situations for relationship coaching, as well as wide range of situations for holistic health in my holistic health practice. So depending on what's going on, a lot of times what I found in the beginning of my practice was that a lot of times people had what they thought were health issues, but what they were really having were a lot of both issues in relationship to themselves and issues in relationship to others. So part of why I started doing sex and intimacy coaching is both my fascination with sex and intimacy and human nature, but also my desire and my innate nature to be able to be a bit of a mediator, which I think I came across quite naturally in a family where, looking back at my own family dynamics, growing up with two parents who both had they had a language barrier as well as just a personality barrier. And I felt, whether I was or not, I felt like the intermediary, the mediator for them. So it seems that I've been in it, I've been at it, I've been mediating for a very long time and continue to do so, not with my parents anymore, but with other people. So today, I think it's a really good thing to look at what your relationship goals are, whether you're in one, whether you're not in one. If you're not in one, what kind of relationship would you like to be in, if any? If you are in one, what kind of relationship targets do you have? And this applies to anybody too. If you're in a polycule and you have, many different people that you are polyamorous relationship with, all these things can apply to the different dynamics of relationships, as whether you're lovers or not lovers. You can also apply it to friendships. You can apply it to family as well. But because this is a pleasure zone, these are going to be mostly in reflection and relation to all things to do with your personal relationship that is probably having to do with intimacy as well. So we will be talking about intimacy goals. When I talk about intimacy goals with, say, family members, it's not about sex. Intimacy is not the same as putting your body parts together. That's not the same. Intimacy can be developing a deeper relationship to yourself and then being able to develop a deeper relationship to others, which can even be something simple as knowing somebody's love language and then delivering it, whether that's a lover or a child. If your child has got a top love language of touch and you happen to give them hugs when they need them, then you're delivering a love language and creating a deeper connection and more intimate relationship. Not sex intimacy, let's be clear, different, completely different context of intimate there. So I can get that could be confusing for people. So we are going to stay on target. We're going to talk about relationships that are ones that are primarily to do with couples, whatever kind of coupling you're in. That's, whether you're, however you identify, whether you identify in the LGBTQ or not, this is all relevant to all relationships. So I think one of the things that we need to really look at are when you're looking at like long-term targets, or even within like a year of targets for your relationship, and you're looking at what would you like, areas of growth that you would like to have. I think some of the main ones to consider are, what is your communication level like? Do you appreciate the way that your partner communicates? Are you communicating well with your partner? I think top-notch thing to look at when it comes to relationships in general is to be really clear with communication. So using language that each other understands, and also being able to use the language that works for you, because you also don't want to always be tripping over your own feet just trying to please your partner. So working with each other, there's always room for negotiation and being able to use language that both works and can actually roll off your tongue. So in identifying certain relationship targets and goals for, whether it's 3 months, 6 months down the road, you can even give them timelines, because then you can look back on it and see what you've accomplished in those targets. Having and being able to identify them is going to require some level of communication, because in order to discuss these targets, you're going to have to be able to communicate with your partner, whether it's verbally or written, or interpretive dance. That's up to you. Either way, we're going to need to be able to communicate the targets that you have. So what are some of the things that, and this is just like a question I'm putting out there for you guys. So this is kind of something that you can play with in your own questioning and query. It's like, what are some of the things that you've been thinking about, even maybe fantasizing about, and would like to bring that to the table in your relationship? Are there certain things sexually you'd like to bring to the table? Are there certain things like travel or certain play? Definitely use your 5 love languages as a good reference for certain things that you maybe would like to have or try in the relationship. So, if it's like, one target might be that you would like to have more cuddle time. So that would be touching on the love language of touch. And maybe there's something of having spontaneous gifts for each other. That would be touching on the love language of gifts. And then there could also be things like kind words, words of affirmation, and also acts of service. There's You can use your love languages, which we talk about quite a lot on this show. And if you're not familiar with the love languages in general, check out Gary Chapman's book, The Five Love Languages, and start to utilize some of those concepts in being able to create intimacy targets. So usually your biggest complaint, whether you're saying it out loud or just saying it to yourself, your biggest complaint is the thing that has you feel that you're not loved. And those are the things we need to work on first in order to feel not only loved, but be able to feel secure in the relationship, to be able to relax, to be able to enjoy. That leads to greater pleasure. So, what are the things that you feel like you've been complaining about in the relationship? Like, I don't have enough time with my partner. We never go out on dates. Well, if you don't have enough time and you don't go out on dates, then one of your complaints is that you are not having quality time with your partner. And that's something that you can remedy if you're living in the same area, or even if you're not. I know a couple who they work, like one partner works far away most of the time, and another one is home most of the time. But they find a way, when the partner who travels for work comes home, they find a way to have time together, and they do random sweet things together. So there's always a way. It's just a matter of what are you choosing to do with your time, and are you willing to invest it in your partner, especially if that's something where you're like, I really wish we would have more dates and more time together. Then you need to take the time and invest it. And that means blocking off your calendar. Block off your calendar. You're blocking off your calendar for sex too. There's no problem with doing that whatsoever. It's important that you get together. So I was mentioning communication as really key, because it's important that when you realize what your needs are, that you do get together, whether you're setting up a time to have a meeting. And scheduling time for this makes sense, just as if you schedule time to go to the doctor, if you're scheduling time for work, if you're scheduling time even to go to a concert, why would you not schedule time to have a conversation with your partner about something that matters, like your relationship, and having growth in your relationship, and being able to look at what those targets are? You know, in the next 6 months, I'd like to be able to do A, B, C, and D together. And then when you look back, see if you've accomplished them, and figure out if you haven't accomplished them. We're going to work on, like, if you haven't accomplished them, then what do you do? Rather than going into the depths of despair, what can you do if you haven't achieved your targets? And what can help you to actually get back on track so that you can achieve your targets? So what are the things you're feeling like you're missing? What are the things you're desiring the most of? What are some of the things that maybe you're looking at other relationships with other people and you see it and you're like admiring it or being jealous? Those are usually probably things you would like as well. If you don't have people around you who are couples and you're not really sure what you want, one of the things you can do, if you like watching TV or reading books, is find relationships in these other sources that you admire. I'm not saying that they're necessarily achievable, because these are, like, you know, fictional characters that you're probably watching or reading about. But you can take some elements of these things and bring that into getting clarity as to what you would like. Because sometimes I actually, like, really do have people show up and say, I really don't know what I want. And a lot of times that comes down to that they've never been asked. So they've never taken the time to figure it out. And they don't know how to feel it out or figure it out, because whenever they have, they've often been rejected. So that becomes problematic. So some people never even create targets because they feel like they're going to be rejected, neglected, let down anyway. So why bother? And I say it's worth the bother if this is a relationship that you feel you would like to be in, that you would like to grow in, that you would like to sustain. Then you need to take the time to, say, bother with that, even though it really can come down to being quite an enjoyable little adventure to discuss things with your partner and get clear on what you need. Because if you're not really clear on what your targets are for intimacy, then how is your partner supposed to know? They will not know. As much as it's fun to think they can read your brain, they usually can't. So, what are some of the relationship goals you have? And then your partner can do the same. Start to look at what some of their needs are that they would like to have met in the relationship. And some of those needs are sometimes even financial. So, getting on the same page with that, maybe some of your targets are spiritual too. Maybe you want to meditate together. So, have that as a target, discuss it. Don't force it on your partner. Don't say, like, don't give ultimatums because those generally don't work. So, have those targets, bring them to the table, discuss them together, and see what you can come up with. There are ways that we're going to move through that. And of course, if you would like and have done your lists and not really sure how to negotiate them, you can always connect with me and we can set up an appointment to go through your lists and do a negotiation with you and your partner. So we're going to head to our first commercial break. You are listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who are brand new to this station and to this show, if you're brand new to the station, you're going to find there's a lot of different programs on the Inspired Choices Network. So go listen to all kinds of shows. Grab our app so that you can go to bed with me. And also, because otherwise, so yeah, what else can you do is you can listen to us on pretty much every single podcast platform that you can imagine where podcasts are played, as well as on TV. Yeah, what else can I tell you? That is a great way to get in touch, learn more. And also, if you do want to connect, you can go to my website, milicajelenic.com. That's my name, first and last.com. So in the last segment, we were looking at how do we find out what the goals are? How do we come together? And a lot of times we have to find out what our own targets are and find out where we feel like things have been missing and what's been bothering us. And then from that, it's easier to decipher what we actually desire and what we want to create and what we're looking at sharing with our partner and growing into. And so as we have this list and, maybe we sat down to have a date to share the list and we've, read the book by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages, we've read that, we know what's going on. We kind of know where things could require improvement. We started writing down some ideas and you can actually share it, share a doc with your partner, whether, like like a Google Doc or something. You can write down ideas on there, which can be kind of fun, that you can go in and look and see who's got what idea for playing around and having more intimacy and just a better relationship, right? So this isn't just about sex, but in this next little segment, we are going to talk about intimacy milestones. So that's really where we're getting closer to our partner. And again, it's not just sex, but sex can be part of this. And how do you know that you've hit a milestone? How do you know that you've, maintained target? I don't think there's any apps on like your Apple Watch that are going to track your level of satisfaction with your relationship. Can you imagine? I bet that's coming. It's like your heartbeat was really low today and there was no excitement. Therefore, your relationship is not very fun. I'm sure they're going to come up with that in my lifetime to be able to decipher whether you are on track with your relationship, because that's what AI is up to. AI is just going to find a way to get rid of all the jobs. So we won't even need intimacy coaches anymore. Anyway, might I digress? So when we're looking at what are some milestones, we need to figure out what are some of the things that I think, struggled with is probably the best way to put it. What did you struggle with the most? If you found that you were struggling with connecting with your partner, having time to be with your partner, then when you've actually created the time and the space to be with your partner, and you've done that on a consistent basis, and the two of you have dedicated considerable amount of effort as in like you're both choosing it. It's not like it's got to be hard. So you've dedicated some level of effort to each other. Then when you look back, say in 3 months or a year, because you can also get a scheduling app to share with your partner, and together you can set dates on there to make sure that you've got time for each other, right? So I know that on my calendar, I don't actually have like a set thing where there was occasions in the past where I did put my husband specifically like in the calendar so that I would block off time to make sure. And now I've just changed my calendar in order to make sure that there is time for my family, so that people can't get a hold of me 14 hours a day. They can only get a hold of me for a certain set number of hours a day, so that I have the time to be with my husband, to be with my child, to be with family and friends. So making sure that that time is available. So when you hit those milestones of, say, the time being spent together, mark it on the calendar. You could, I love Excel spreadsheets. You can have an Excel spreadsheet where it's like, rating 1 out of 10. How do you rate yourself on your ability to stay on track with your dates? Well, we were at a number 8 because 8 out of 10 dates we stayed on. And that's the thing, is like you could actually do 10 dates, and did you stay on track for 8 out of 10 dates or 10 out of 10 dates? That's an easy way to track it. Do it in segments of 10 weeks. I know it doesn't break up the year in a very easy way, but it breaks up your calculations, if you like calculations, which I love calculations. So you can like actually go in to your Google Excel spreadsheet if you want and track it. For people who are like a little OCD and love tracking things, it can be fun to track it. Or just acknowledge it and pop a little gold star on your lover's cheek and be like, gold star, you win this week. You got the gold star. We stayed on track. So yeah, it can be different ways. However you want to acknowledge that you've stayed on track with your targets. It's important that you celebrate, whether it's the big milestones or the small milestones, whether you're doing like spending the 10 minutes in the morning talking to each other and the 10 minutes at night, which we've talked about in some episodes, or whether you've trying something completely new like hang gliding together, which would be like a big milestone of something that, especially if you've been sitting on it for a long time, of things you'd like to do, but then you never really did it. And you might have wanted to do it for like 20 years. Well, that would be the one thing that would be a big milestone, is something you've been sitting on for quite a while, and now you're taking action with it. It's not necessarily that it's a big thing, although it can be, like buying a house or something. That's also a big milestone. So one of the things you also want to do is be really realistic with your targets, right? So if your milestone is that you're going to, or if your target is something, and in order to achieve your milestone, you might have to do something like have sex 24 times a day, which could take away from your livelihood or your business or your life in general, then you need to get more realistic, like maybe twice a day or once a day or once every 2 days. So being realistic with your targets is important. Now, if your whole career is based on sex and you can have sex with your partner 24 hours a day, then kudos to you. I hope you're making good money in porn, because that's probably what you'd be doing. So if you've got realistic, achievable targets, then when you have achieved your targets, you can have a conversation with your partner and acknowledge, like, look what we did. We achieved our target. You could look back on the week if you like, or you can look at your targets daily. So if it is a target that you have set as a daily target of, say, talking every 10 minutes in the morning and every 10, like for 10 minutes at night, and it's not something you've ever done before, then on a daily basis, you can acknowledge, it's like, wow, you're like, thank you for spending and investing that 10 minutes with me. I really appreciated that. It's one way to acknowledge that you've hit the target, and to also give appreciation to your partner, because the appreciation and gratitude helps it grow. And remember to give that gratitude back to your partner. Try using, different words, and thank them for their presence, especially if it is something to do with quality time. So how do you actually create achievable targets? Well, you also have to look at how much time you have available financially. Is it going to cost you any money? Do you have that available? Do you have the health that you might require to do whatever it is you desire? So there's a few factors to consider when you are looking at how to create realistic, achievable targets. If your target is to walk up a mountain next week, but you've been in a wheelchair for 45 years, then you might want to give yourself some more time to be realistic about your achievable target. And be realistic. Is this something that physiologically, if you've been in a wheelchair for 45 years, can you climb up the mountain? And so I say that if you think of it symbolically, it's like if you've been fighting with your partner for 45 years, and you have nothing in common, but you're together because of the principle of marriage, and you believe that that's the only thing that you should do, and so you stay together even though you hate each other, then you can't have the expectation that in one conversation that everything's going to be okay, and that you can, turn around and go, we went from having fights every day and we had one conversation, and all of a sudden now everything and anything is forgiven. We have zero resentment because we're superhumans, and we're moving forward, and everything is great. It's not how it's going to work. If you have years and years and years of built up stuff that hasn't been discussed, you're going to have a lot of conversations before it can be resolved. And you might come to the realization that these things are not resolvable between the two of you. They maybe are dissolvable. So you might need to actually separate. It's just acknowledging the facts. So staying on target just means that staying on target can be simple as long as you make the targets simple to achieve. So like I was saying, if you haven't walked in 45 years and you've been in a wheelchair, then don't expect yourself to climb a mountain overnight or in that week, in the next week. You need to take certain steps for rehabilitation, whether that's like when we look at a relationship that's become immobile. Basically, relationships get stuck and they get immobile as well. So you need to be able to rehabilitate that relationship and then get it to a place where it can move forward, whether that's together or apart. But either way, however it's moving forward, there needs to be some conversation and something to help that happen. So milestones can help you move forward together, but some milestones are also about realizing what is working and what's not working, and being okay with walking away. So I think that's a conversation for another day. In this conversation today, we're looking at how to growth in relationship and towards a relationship together. But just know that sometimes these conversations can be really open and they can lead to potentially severing the ties. So you might want to have somebody in there to help mediate all of those things if you don't have the skill set. And if you're not used to communicating with your partner, having somebody there to help you out is a good idea. So we're going to head off to our next commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to finish up this segment on how to align your intimacy, what steps you can take to align what each other is desiring, what you desire with what your partner desires in order to hit some intimacy milestones. I've got a few more tips and tools for you on that. And then we're going to talk about our next segment when we come back. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we are talking all about having some intimacy targets, some relationship targets, and being able to hit those targets so that you can have growth in your relationship and note those milestones. So what does even a milestone mean? I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but like back in the day when I'm going to use England as an example, because I've seen this in quite a few different period dramas on in England. You could be walking down a road and there would be an actual stone with, say, for example, London, 34 miles in with an arrow in one direction, or like Bath, 22 miles, and it'd be like an arrow in another direction. So I don't think that's even remotely accurate. So yes, feel free to laugh at me and my actual measurements there, but that's a milestone. It shows you the miles on a stone. And so when we are having milestones in relationships, it's like, how far do we have to go to achieve certain targets? And it's like, oh, look, we made it to this milestone. Okay, and there's another marker a few miles ahead, another milestone. Oh, look at that. Now we're getting closer and closer to hitting the target. So milestones are really great. There aren't really the end game. They are showing you that you're on progress towards your target. So I really like the visual of milestones. When I was talking about that, I realized maybe some people have never heard of what milestones are. And it's just like a word, but didn't really know that it was actually a stone that had miles written on it. So now you know. I like strange and interesting facts. So, how do we play with our milestones? I think you can actually create visuals if that's something you'd like to do too. Like I was telling you about the stone. Maybe you'd actually like to create um, visuals like that. You could always go and get your little stones from a shop and write on them, whether they're river stones or whatever, nice and flat. You could write things on like a stone for your partner, give it to them and go, you know what? We are 3 weeks into having daily cuddles, and write that on your milestone and be like, wow, our target is to do this for 6 months. 5 months, we have 5 months more ahead of having great cuddles every night. So also to like encourage the desire to keep choosing into the target, and to keep choosing the behavior that's going to get you to reach the target, and like note those milestones where you are having accomplishments on a regular basis, because a lot of times what happens is when you don't acknowledge those on a regular basis, then you'll just get off track. Like the targets will go away, you'll miss it completely. I find too, when I'm talking to people, they'll say, I want to do this and this and this. And if I come back to them in 2 weeks and I said, okay, so you're going to go write that down, share it in a shared document, because I'm all about shared documents, even for finances and things. I love shared documents. So then, if you come back in a few weeks and I ask you, so which one of these things have you taken action on? And you haven't taken action on any, my question then is, how important are these to you? So I think that's something to really ask. If you are not stepping into your targets, how important are they to you? Are they as important as you thought they were? And if they are as important as you thought they were, what is stopping you from choosing them? Is it you? Is it you've decided there's no time? Again, there's always time. There's always a way to make time. I don't see why you can't. I know people with multitudes of children who still make time for each other, still have all kinds of, they still have time for sex. In fact, they're like hardworking farmers. They have time to make babies, have sex, and bake bread. So we really don't have a reason to make excuses. I could see that if your health is declining, and that is physically you're unable, or if your mental health is declining and you can't even feel present, that's a little different. Those are taking priority then, so that you can be in relationship with yourself, so that you can be in relationship with somebody else. Because remember, all relationships starts with you. First, you need to have a relationship with yourself. Know you, know what you desire, know what your targets are, know what you feel like you've been missing. And sometimes you can look back on old relationships and see what, or exes, we'll call them, and see, what's like an ongoing thread or trend that you've had. And maybe by looking at those, you can often see, where maybe you didn't ask for something, where you weren't able to communicate to your partner what your needs and desires are, and that created a rift. Or you found that you weren't heard when you know, when your partner would ask for something, but you were like, I'm not comfortable with that. So there was a miscommunication. It's a really big issue. And people are just learning. Like, we're like babies learning to crawl right now when it comes to communication. We are really, really new to this whole game. People talk to each other, but that's different than communicating. Lots of people can talk and tell you what they want, but to communicate it, to be able to acknowledge what you desire and use terms like I, and be responsible for your own feelings and take blame out of conversation, that's big. And we're not totally there yet. We're growing as a society to be more attuned, more emotionally aware, emotionally, what's the word for that? Like we have the IQ and we have the EQ, like our emotional quotient is going up as well. So I think what some of the things we need to really look at when we're looking at targets too. So, and if I didn't mention, you can always head over to my website, send me a note. I have a thing called a do's, don'ts, maybes list, which I will be putting on my website for a download. It was there before and I temporarily took it down, but I do have a do's, don'ts, maybes list that if you would like it, just send me a note through my website and I'm happy to get that to you. And you can use that with your partner. There's a lot of lists like that on the internet as well. So you can feel free to look up. Sometimes they're called yes, no, maybes lists. I like do's, don'ts, maybes. Yeah, I do want to try that. No, I don't want to try that. Maybe I'll try this. So yes, no, maybe, do's, don'ts, maybes. Using reference to, you can get really specific things that you'd like to do together, whether that's going out different places. Like, yes, I do want to go to new restaurants. I would like to try new food. No, I don't want to go to the same restaurant every day for the rest of my life. Maybe I'll even like try something that's completely outrageous. So that's like in reference to food and like going out on a date, right? You can use the do's, don'ts, maybes lists for all kinds of things. The one that I have available, the do's, don'ts, maybe list, is for some pretty basic sex stuff, but when you stick it together, it can get kind of fun. So it's got locations. I think it's got like 15 different locations, different positions, different toys, different things to do. It becomes almost like a clue game. Like you do it in the bathroom with, penetration from behind while using the water head. Good times, it just helps with different things and you can stick them together. It's like, oh no, I would never do that. Okay, then that's on your don'ts list. But so that's your do's list. Cool. If you've never tried it and you're curious, that's your maybes list. So you can throw all kinds of things together and get creative on that front. And so my list is pretty vanilla, but I am going to be working on a not so vanilla on introduction to kink kind of do's, don'ts, maybes list. And I will leave the extreme kinks to the people who live that lifestyle. That could be a lot of fun, right? So it is a lot of fun to have a fun kinky list. So you can create your own and feel free to write to me and I'm happy to give you a list as well. Always happy to hear from listeners and I love getting emails from you guys. I have some avid listeners who send me emails on a regular basis. It keeps me going. It keeps me happy. Gives me ideas too for shows. So that's always great too. I love to do that. And if you do give me an idea for a show and you'd like a shout out, I'm happy to give you a shout out. If you do give me ideas for a show and you just want it to be secret, I will just mention that this show came from an idea from a listener. So and then you'll know when you're listening that it's you. So what was I talking about? Where was I headed? What am I talking about? Okay, so we were talking about figuring out how to get in line with your partner so you can figure out what are those targets. So making your list, coming together, making the time to come together on a regular basis. So getting out your calendar and scheduling actual time to be together is important. And then how do you actually find out and track your progress? Well, you can do it on a daily basis if you want, or you can do it weekly. Again, I was saying, it's not like that I'm aware of that Apple has some kind of tracking method to say you're on track sexually. Good job for you. Apple, please don't do that. I'm sure somebody else is going to, now that I've said it. And if you do this after this date, it's considered copyrighted by me because I said it publicly. No, I'm just kidding. It's not, but maybe I'll do a little Alexandra Graham Bell and send myself something in the mail with that concept. Maybe not. So we're looking at how do we track this stuff? And so you can have charts, and I'm, big fan of Excel spreadsheets. Give each other something for when you hit milestones, whether it's time, dinner out, movies, something like that. Do something, have a celebration, flowers, whatever it is, but find ways also that you can measure your growth. And like having a visual can be fun. You get really playful with that. I have this like giant roll of manila paper that I could imagine, like I could start at one end and make like a timeline graph that this whole roll and like add pictures if I wanted from like take them out of magazines and slap them on there. Oh, look, Target today, we 69 tonight, and that goes on there. It would be like kind of a fascinating image that then, if I'm ever bored and like all of the power goes out in the house and I have like a really giant box, I could make the roll go through and make it like a paper movie. And then people could watch this fabulous story of me hitting sexual milestones. I'm sure my husband's going to really appreciate that. But it's creative. It's creative. You can try it. Find your own creative way to note your progress, because the more you do, the more you're going to realize that you how much you've accomplished and how much growth you've had as a couple. Because what happens a lot of the times is people forget how much they've grown. And from a sex and intimacy coaching perspective, I often see a lot of growth in people, and they can sometimes see it in themselves too, quite often. And that's the most important thing, is that they see the growth in themselves. But a lot of times the partner is so committed to who they were and the issues they have with them that it's like absolute denial that there's potential for change. And it can sometimes take longer for the partner to see it. So if you note these things, if you note the changes, if you journal about them, if you use images, if you use targets, if you use bonus, blowjob for hitting the target, here's a sticker on your cheek for hitting the target, whatever it happens to be, you will find that the more you acknowledge the growth, the more the person feels motivated to grow. And then also when you're looking back, your resentments won't be there, thinking, oh, I spend all this time and I do all this work and the other person doesn't do any work, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at where they were before they started, looking at targets and trying to achieve targets, and you look at where they are even 6 months down the road from that, if there truly is no growth, and if you're working with me, I will tell you if there's no growth or not. But if there really is growth, you should be able to note it, even if it's that 1% trajectory that's just going off on a different tangent. That 1% is going to take you in a new direction completely. So it doesn't have to be overnight. It can be absolutely gradual. And in fact, that can often be more sustainable than the 180-degree switch in personality or tactics. So little things will help you hit those big milestones, which will help you hit those big targets. So when we're looking at how to track those things, journal, Excel spreadsheets, giant pictures. Again, you can do interpretive dance. Why not? Film it just so that you have your record of that. And then celebrations, definitely connected to that, whether you are, just celebrating with flowers or celebrating with whatever way you guys celebrate, do it. So you can have different ways of looking at how to acknowledge that you've hit those targets, maybe going away, maybe having different, like a dinner out. But I think it's really important that you have check-ins, whether it's weekly, monthly, or bi-weekly. Try and do at least one a month and look at how you're growing, because if you usually wait longer than a month, you're just going to get off track. Best thing would be to do is have like smaller meetings once a week, and then more commitment for a bigger check-in once a month. And then look at progress. Always look at progress, not perfection. That is like a key for so many different self-help groups. So progress, not perfection. We're going to head to our last commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up this show and look at a few communication strategies so that you can get your goals met when we come back from this commercial break.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, Join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Have a few minutes to just kind of tap on some communication strategies. So a lot of times you'll need some communication strategies if you feel like all the things you've been doing haven't been working, or if your goals haven't been met, or if there's been no progress in a while. So a lot of things you want to do can be uncomfortable, and that's okay. So the number one, I'm going to give you a few tips on this one. You want to have conversations that start with curiosity, right? And how do you have those? And how do you have a conversation that doesn't judge your partner or make your partner feel bad? So one of the methods that you can use is something called the Gottman method. And the Gottman method is where you use, say, five different compliments, 5 different ways of saying something kind to maybe one criticism. So the Gottman method, which was created and developed by Doctors John and Julie Gottman, they have something called the 5-to-1 rule, which aims for at least 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction, which can also be like compliments versus like a criticism, but 5 positive interactions in a day versus, so if you have 5 positive interactions, you might wake up, be really happy to see each other, good morning, you might be sitting down to have breakfast together, and everything's great. And then there might be like, why didn't you take out the garbage last night? That is like a negative interaction, right? So there's those, and there's blame that comes with that negative interaction. But if you're generally going for like 5 really good interactions that help sustain you, it can be really helpful in being able to kind of get out of the bit that a lot of times people put a lot of energy onto that one interaction that can be stressful. So you also want to have stress reducing conversations, which are where you don't give solutions, which is a lot of times really hard. It's just listening without offering solutions. And I can't tell you how many times this particularly can be frustrating for men who are problem solvers, or anybody who's a problem solver, to listen without offering solutions or asking, would you like my opinion on this? Or would you like me to help you with this in any way? No, I just want you to listen. So when your partner says, I would just like you to listen, I just need to rant, just listen and let them rant. They're often not looking for a solution. I know that's hard to imagine, that somebody would just talk and complain and not want a solution. They just need to process. A lot of times people are verbal processors and just need to get it out of their system. So you might also want to find some other ways to like bring the love out with your partner. And one of the other Gottman methods is the love map exercise, which is where you can ask questions to deepen your understanding of your partner's inner world. You can ask questions like, what dreams haven't you shared with me? Are there any dreams about your life that you maybe haven't achieved or even discussed that you'd like to have? So if you're looking to find out more about the Gottman method, there's a book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman. And there's a website by Gottman, gottman.com, which is part of the Gottman Institute's website. So those are really good resources for learning communication skills for sure. And then one of the other things that we want to do is active listening. That's where when you hear what somebody says, you say, okay, this is what I heard. So they might say, well, you never listened to me. Okay, so what I heard is that you feel like you're not being listened to. Is that correct? And then they might be like, why are you repeating me? Okay, well, if you're active listening, then it's really important that both partners know that you're active listening, because it can come across, for some people, it can feel obnoxious, like they're being parroted, but that's not it. It's to gain clarity. And it does take practice in learning how to do active listening without sounding like you're annoyed or you're parroting them or you're confused. And sometimes you might be confused and you're asking for clarity. So this is what I heard.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. We'll return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.